The value dropped like a rock. I only would have realized the loss if I would have sold it. The price of housing in that neighborhood went as cheap as $15,000 and $20,000, and I had paid $70,000 for this house. But I was renting it, and my rent was covering my mortgage payment and all of my expenses, including my maintenance.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
Hello and welcome to episode 60. My guest today is Jeff Wilson, a single-family home investor here in the Grand Rapids, Wyoming, and Granville, Michigan area. Jeff has over 20 years of experience, and he got his start investing in Cleveland, Ohio. We're going to talk about that. Jeff specializes in B and C properties, typically in the $40,000 to $50,000 range. Jeff, I'm looking forward to talking to you about this today.
Thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here.
You got your start investing in Cleveland, Ohio. Is that because you were working there at the time?
Correct. I was born in a suburb of Cleveland, joined the Air Force, stationed in Tucson, Arizona, and then we moved back to the Cleveland area. And I went to work there, and then I always had the drive to do something more instead of just having a job. I wanted to make as much money as possible. I like to hustle and just do everything I possibly could.
Well, tell us about your first home that you bought in Cleveland, Ohio. What was that experience like for you?
That was a HUD property. The program has changed a bit since then. But they had listings in the newspaper for properties that were going up for HUD bidding. So I saw one. It was listed at $10,000. It was a 5-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. So I did a drive-by. And
what year was this?
This was in roughly 1996. The bid price was $10,000. They had the instructions of the bid process. So I just thought about it. I didn't know any landlords or property investors. I just thought sounds like something I'd be able to do.
Yeah, and you like the price. The price is right.
The price was right. And I had already tried a business prior to that, and it didn't work out so well. But I ended up getting my money back from it eventually. But I thought at $10,000, this is a pretty cheap investment, and I was looking what the rental market would pay at the time. And I thought this just seems like a no-brainer if I can get into it.
Wow. So you knew nothing about property management?
Not a thing.
Did you know anything about owning rental property, investing in rental property at this point?
I had been to a couple of the seminars.
Like some of the gurus when they come to town?
Correct.
That kind of
they
thing?
were really big back then. And
what had you been to that influenced you to buy this property?
I think it was a Robert Allen. I can't remember, but it was like they advertised it very heavily, and that was actually in Tucson. I went to it, and then they explained the program and so on. They wanted you to sign up for like a $500 or $1,000 program. I did not buy anything. I just went to listen to it. And I thought I'd get more out of it, but they were really trying to invite people there and then plunk down some money and buy the program. So I kicked it around. I had that in the back of my head, and then I ended up moving to Cleveland. Still had that in the back of my head, and I thought, this sounds like a winner.
So you had been to one of the starter seminars.
Correct.
And that was it. You just said, all right, I'm not going to pay any more for more information. I'm just going to go buy a property.
Right.
That's basically what you did, which is a great way to go. Why spend more money on education when you can just buy a property for $10,000 and get your own education doing it?
Correct. I had a couple years prior to that in Arizona, I had bought into a vending business. I went to a franchise seminar, several different franchise businesses, and saw one that I thought I could make a go of it. It was $15,000 for some vending machines, and I bought into it. And that didn't work out. Long story short, that didn't work out so well.
What kind of vending machines?
It was it was for Bic lighters.
Oh,
and you would place them in a business and then put decals on the Bic lighters advertising that business name. But the machines turned out they weren't produced very well. Someone with small hands could stick their hands into the machine and pull the lighters out. And once I realized that, this just started going sideways. So I the company actually put me in touch with another buyer that was looking for more machines. So I ended up selling him my machines. And then with the job that I had, my daytime job, I found another retailer that was willing to take my Bic lighters with their decal, their name on it. So I produced the decals, put that convenience store name on my Bic lighters, and I sold those Bic lighters to that retailer, and I ended up getting my money back out of it.
Okay, so you had to get a little creative there to be
correct.
able to pull your money out. So you had tried kind of the vending machine franchise marketing thing. That didn't really work out the way you wanted it to. So you thought, well, maybe real estate will turn out some more cash for you.
Correct. And I had spent $15,000 on the vending business, and I got out of it pretty close to what I paid. I discounted the machines quite a bit to get rid of them, but then the profit I made from my lighters, I came pretty close to breaking even. But then with the rental property, I saw this house at $10,000, and I thought, and I had no idea what I might be into as far as roofing and so on like that. It turns out I didn't have those kind of issues. I didn't have to put major investment into it. But if I did, it probably would have turned out a little differently. But
well, talk about it. So you bought this house for $10,000 through a HUD.
Correct.
It was like a HUD auction or a HUD.
It was a closed bidding process. Mm-hmm. You turned in a bid. I can't remember the exact process. I think I had to get a realtor, and then they submitted a bid, and then all the bids went in, and you found out 2 weeks later they opened all the bids, and it turned out I was the only bidder on it.
Oh,
so
okay.
I got the house for, I think I bid $10,300. It was minimum bid of $10,000. I bid $10,300, and I got the house.
Wow. Okay. So now you have this house. You don't really know what you're doing yet.
Right.
What happened then? How did you tackle this house?
I got inside, and prior to the bidding on the house, you could not get inside the house. You had to buy it, do a walk around outside, and that was it. You could not get inside the house. So I got the keys at the closing and went and took a look at my new purchase, and it was very, very dated, but just went to work peeling wallpaper. There was several layers of wallpaper, probably an inch and a half thick of wallpaper on the walls.
What, were you doing all the work yourself?
Yes, I was doing. My wife and I were doing everything.
Okay.
So we did basically cosmetic work. I had some electric work done. I brought in a contractor because I saw it wasn't quite up to code, and it was I think 60 amp service at the time, and I brought in an electrician. Brought it up to code at the time, 100 amp service, outlets, proper outlets in every room, and grounded outlets. And then some minor plumbing repairs, and that was it. And I peeled the wallpaper off and painted the entire house, and that was it. That's all I did for maintenance.
Wow. So then you had to get tenants. How much time was it between when you actually took possession of the house to when you were able to start marketing and get tenants in there?
From when I bought the house to when I was ready to rent was probably 2 months, and I did absolutely zero marketing.
Really?
As I was working over there, I had a pickup truck in the driveway, and it's still to this day when I'm at a house and there's work going on, tenants walk up and ask, what's going on with the house? Is it available for rent? I had a potential tenant knock on the door and walk in the house and asked me if the house is available for rent. And she asked me if I took Section 8. And I told her I don't know a thing about Section 8. I'm not even actually renting the house yet. I haven't advertised it, but it's about ready. So she said, well, I have a certificate for $932 a month. So if you say your rent is $932 a month, they'll approve it. And I was thinking I'm going to get $800, $850 for the house, and she said, well, they'll pay up to $932.
Wow.
So
that's okay. So is that the tenant you went with? And
yes.
You're getting $932. So here you have this house that you bought for $10,000. You probably put a couple thousand into it.
I had about $6,000 into it, so you're 16 total.
16 total all in. Plus, if you value you and your wife's time, there's
Correct.
more, but that's sweat equity, I guess. So 16,000 in, you're making $900 a month. Yeah, that's a little bit over. What is that? Close to 11,000 a year.
Correct.
I mean, so you have this paid back in less than a year and a half.
Correct.
You have all your money back out.
Correct. And the checks were regular as clockwork. I was dancing on the ceiling every first of the month.
And was it that smooth? I mean, or were there some hitches along the way?
After a bit, I did have some hitches. Couple issues with the house that I had taken care of, and I brought in a contractor for that. Some plaster was coming down and so on, and I brought in a contractor to take care of that. And then I started having some tenant issues, and eventually ended up having to put her out.
Okay, so you had to evict this one particular tenant.
Yes.
How much time then did it take to turn the house again and get new tenants in, and what were they paying?
It was about 2 months. It was vacant for about 2 months while I was turning it around, and it was just, I did a little bit more cosmetic work. The tenant didn't really tear up the house too much. And in hindsight, 20 years later, it's about the typical for what I've seen for my properties. Some cosmetic work, cleaning, and I marketed it and turned it around again. And I think I rented it for $900 the second time.
Okay, so you're still in the ballpark.
Yes.
Wow. That was a great success on your first time out.
Yes, I thought this is it.
Not really. I mean, for not really knowing much about investing or owning rental property, to buy something for $10,000, be able to turn it so quickly and get tenants in there, and have it all your money back out within a year and a half or less. That's pretty good.
Right. I thought this is great. And when I was done with that, I sat back for a couple of months, and I thought and then I got bored because I was so used to working continuously after my day job, going and spending a few hours at the rental house. I got bored, and with the income that I was making off the rental, I turned around and bought another house down the street, about 6 blocks away, and that was a duplex, an up and down 2-unit.
And this is still in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yes, and that was my first house. Was in what I would say a C+ neighborhood. And 6 blocks away, it was into probably, I would say, a C- to a D+ neighborhood. So it's
would you at that time, would you have considered it a neighborhood that was on the rise and improving, or was it moving more toward the C-
it was
range?
It was staying right where it was at, or
So it was a
possibly
stable,
getting worse.
Stable neighborhood.
Yes.
Okay, so you bought a duplex this time.
Yes.
And how did you buy this one, and how much did you pay for it?
The list price was $16,000, and I paid $14,000 for it.
Wow. Was this a HUD property, or was this a market?
No, this was on the market.
Wow. Okay. And this is like 1996.
Correct.
You paid $14,000 for it.
Correct.
And how much did you have to put into it?
Very little again. I had a tenant. I bought the house with a tenant downstairs, and the upstairs was vacant. I did some light rehab upstairs, and this house had electric issues also. In fact, when I came to look at the house, the downstairs tenant, he was there when I toured the house, and he told me, "You don't want to buy this house. I get shocked every time I use anything electrical, anytime I plug anything in." And so he said, the house is in bad shape. So when I ended up buying the house anyways, and then when I came back and I knocked on the door and I told him, and I showed him the papers that I had bought the house, and I told him that electric issue is going to get taken care of, absolutely priority one. So I'm not going to have anybody electrocuted in my property. So I did get that taken care of.
Good. What was it? Just a matter of hiring an electrician, or did you have to rewire the whole house?
It wasn't a complete rewire of the house, but it was extensive. I did bring in a licensed electrician, and he told me what it needed and so on. And the upstairs also, they were using extension cords from one room to another to keep power in all the rooms.
Oh, wow. So your licensed electrician took care of that as
yes.
well, huh? So
yes.
How much then did you put into the duplex after you bought it?
That was about $7,000. So I paid $14,000 and I put $7,000 into it. So I was into it for about $21,000.
$21,000. And what was it renting out for?
$750 each half. So okay. $1,500 a month.
So you're getting $1,500 a month. Again, less than a year and a half payback.
Right.
You get all your money back out in less than a year and a half.
Correct.
Well, maybe. I mean, I guess I'm not taking into consideration insurance and taxes and
right.
everything. But That's still pretty good, isn't it?
I thought this was the greatest thing I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. So it did have some hassles, but I did have some issues with the tenant that I inherited the downstairs tenant, and I ended up having to start the eviction process, and then he moved out right away. Mm-hmm. And then I rehabbed the downstairs. As soon as I was done with the upstairs, I rehabbed the downstairs and then rented the entire unit out. Okay. Both units out.
So you're finding success owning this rental property. You're also managing and kind of learning as you go, I imagine.
Yes.
What were some of the lessons you learned in the beginning?
To be honest, I really didn't learn too much from the first two. I had some tenant issues. But really, I really didn't, looking back what I know now versus how few problems I had when I first got started, it was an absolute fluke that I didn't have more problems when I first started, because I knew absolutely nothing. I do have some mechanical abilities, but I did try hanging my own drywall. You can buy drywall for $7 a sheet and some screws and nails and so on, and try your hand at it. And I wasn't very good at it. Mm-hmm. If you want it to come out as a professional finish, you need a guy that knows what he's doing. But I did try my hand at it. I tried laying sheet vinyl. But I honestly did very little with those first two properties, and I honestly didn't learn very much from those two. And then the reason I ended up selling those, because the company I was with at the time, I ended up transferring to Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I needed to sell those two properties, and there was an investor near my 2-unit that was buying up quite a few properties in the neighborhood. So he came over and we were talking one time, and he said, "Hey, I'd like to buy your property if you're looking to sell." And at the time, that's when I was still flying high. I'm making good money with these 2 units. My 2-unit and my single house down the street. But he was a nice guy to talk to, and we were talking back and forth what he was doing, buying houses and rehabbing, and he was a buy and hold investor. And then about 6 or 8 months later, I needed to sell because I was getting transferred out of Cleveland, and I didn't want to have property long distance. So I called him up, and he was still interested, and I ended up selling that house for $25,000, the 2-unit for $25,000. Okay,
so you sold that for $25,000. So you made at least $4,000 on it,
right? This is after about a year and a half. So I honestly made most of my money back in rent income, and then I turned around and sold it for $25,000.
Okay, so that's a nice profit there.
Right, and then I also asked him if he was interested in buying a house down the street. I had a house, my single down the street available, and he ended up buying that also. So I sold that one for $19,000.
Wow, again, so and you probably had most of your money back from rent.
Correct.
Okay, so huge success right out of the gate.
Right. I didn't realize how lucky I was at the time. Years later, it hasn't been quite that easy.
So, well, let's get into that. So you moved to Grand Rapids.
Yes.
And you're transferred through work.
Yes.
How long did it take you once you got to Grand Rapids before you started looking to buy?
It was about 2 years. And actually, the job that I had that I transferred with, I ended up leaving that company and breaking out on my own. Started up a business on my own in the same field.
What field is that?
In route sales. It's sales to the grocery stores, food products to the grocery stores. So that's the field I was in. I had at the time, I think 10 or 15 years of experience in that field at the time. And then I ended up buying a business in Grand Rapids, which is, you're basically an independent contractor. You pay for a territory, you buy your own delivery vehicle, and you buy product from the company and you sell it to the retailers, the grocery stores and the club stores like Sam's Club and Costco and so on.
Okay.
So I bought into that. And I was extremely successful right off the bat with that. And once I kind of got my feet on the ground as far as with that business, I started looking at investment property again in Grand Rapids.
So here you have like a successful business.
Yes.
But yet still you're gravitating toward real estate.
Correct.
at the same time. So real estate must have really had a hold on you at that point.
It did, and also just for years, I've always wanted to do more than just the average go to work, come home, and sit and watch TV or something. I wanted to. I like to hustle. I like to make as much money as I can. I want to set myself up for retirement. I've listened to Dave Ramsey for years, off and on. So I'm a big fan of trying to keep your debts down. I don't follow all of his principles, but trying to keep your debts down as low as possible, live within your means, and so on. And I've tried to do that as much as possible.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you brought up Dave Ramsey, because a couple episodes ago, I had a whole conversation about Dave Ramsey with Justin Workman and Rob Minch. So that with that philosophy, you're buying any properties with cash?
No. That's where I veer off of Dave Ramsey's logic. The properties that I was buying, I was getting mortgages, and that's the first house I bought in Grand Rapids, I believe, was in 2006, when they were doing as it turns out now, I didn't know it at the time, but they were doing the stated income loans.
Yeah. And
I didn't realize it at the time, and I'll be the first to admit I'm probably either naive or whatever you want to call it, but I had to turn everything in just like a mortgage. I had gotten I think 3 mortgages prior to that, personal residences. So I had been through the mortgage process. So when I went to buy an investment property, I gave them my income information. And then I got everything back, and I vaguely remember something about the type of a loan it was. It was what I ended up getting was an interest-only adjustable rate mortgage on an investment property. And I didn't realize that until the closing, those were the terms of it, because that's not what I initially signed up for. And then I really went back and forth with whether I wanted to continue with the property or not. But I was so bitten by the bug of investment property, I ended up getting it and figured I could somehow figure it out, and hopefully it would turn out well.
Okay, so you got an interest-only adjustable rate mortgage.
Correct.
Was this on your first rental property that you bought in Grand Rapids?
Yes.
In 2006.
Yes.
Tell us about that property. What did you find? Where did you find it? And
at the time, this was a single-family house, 4-bedroom, 1-bath. Needed some work, but not too much.
What neighborhood was it in?
This is in the northwest side, off of 4th and Lane.
Good location right now. I mean, there are lots. Back then, maybe it was.
It's kind of a funny street because Lane has an exit off the highway.
Yeah. And
then 4th is the widest street leading up to Lane and coming off of another main street down the street, Stocking. So 4th Street is actually pretty busy. But I bought it anyways because that was the best available on the market at the time.
What'd you get it for?
$70,000.
$70,000. And this is 2006, so we're heading into the bubble.
Right, and
with an adjustable rate interest
correct
mortgage. All right,
exactly.
So,
and I thought about that this is a pretty expensive house compared to what I've bought before, and my mortgage payment was manageable. But I knew, it wasn't as good a terms as what I had initially. But I was taking a chance, and I knew I could qualify for it. I've never missed payments with any of my other credit up until that point, so I figured I could make a go of it.
Yeah, and not to mention, you have other income from a successful
correct
business. So if you do run into problems, you can help subsidize your
correct
your mortgage payment from your business.
Correct.
To keep yourself afloat. So tell me what happened. You bought it for $70,000. Is a single family house, 4-bedroom, 1-bath?
4-bedroom, 1-bath.
What kind of rents were you getting?
I believe it was in the $750, $800 range.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly because it's been a bit, and I've been with numerous properties and so on. But I think I was getting around $800 or so.
It's interesting. You're getting a little lower rent for
correct
a property that you paid 7 times as much for
correct
than your first property.
Correct. That math, it's kind of backwards compared to what my experience was. But at the time, I really wanted to get a property, and I had looked at quite a few. And the realtor I had used at the time, she was an investment property owner also. And we toured quite a few, and she gave me some advice here and there with properties that she had. And then I looked at that house, and it was the best available on the market at the time, and I ended up buying it. Okay. Hindsight, I probably should have laid back and kept looking, waited for a better opportunity, but it worked out well.
Yeah, how did it work out? What
I rented it for about, I want to say about 5 or 6 years. Had a couple different tenants, and then the last tenant that I had in it, they were getting ready to buy the house next door. That's when there was mortgage money available, down payment mortgage money available. So they actually signed a contract to buy the house next door to mine. It was a smaller house, and they were buying that for, I believe, $56,000 for a considerably smaller house. And I didn't want to lose my tenants. I didn't want to have the turnover. And I really wasn't in love with this house. Anyways, it was, if I could get out of it, I would. So I convinced them to stay in the house they were in and buy it from me instead of renting anymore, and that would make them homeowners. So I ended up selling it to them on land contract, and I'm still carrying that land contract to this day.
Okay. What would you sell it to them for?
$59,000.
Okay, so you took
I took a bit of a hit.
Yes.
That's
not too bad compared to some of the losses that
Correct.
were sustained on other properties. In that
Correct. And also I've got a spread between what my mortgage interest rate is versus what I'm charging them in interest, so I'm actually making money back.
So you still have the adjustable rate interest-only loan?
I do. I'm getting ready to refinance that. I've tried to refinance it through the mortgage company I'm with. And they won't refinance it because it's not. I don't own it anymore. I've sold it on land contract, so they won't let me refinance it. So I do have other properties that I own free and clear. Most of my properties that I own are free and clear. So I thought about getting access money through that and pay off that house.
So let's talk about the interest-only adjustable rate mortgage for a moment. I think you were probably lucky in the fact that interest rates actually went down.
Correct.
After you got that, did that help you during that recession period?
No.
No. Okay. So how did that house fare during the recession when everything went downhill?
The value dropped like a rock. I only would have realized the loss if I would have sold it, because when the price of housing in that neighborhood went as cheap as $15,000 and $20,000, and I had paid $70,000 for this house, but I was renting it, and my rent was covering my mortgage payment and all of my expenses, including my maintenance. I figured as long as I'm covering my expenses, I'm fine until I have to sell it. Or if I would have sold it at a loss, then I would have realized the loss.
Yeah. So were you basically break even during that period?
I was still making some money. In fact, I think I was making money all along. My mortgage, I can't remember exactly what my payment was at the time. Well, I still have the loan, actually. So I know what my payment was. I was still making money all along, just not as much. Mm-hmm. I wasn't, my cash flow wasn't as good on that house as what the other properties that I do have. But what I look at is I didn't lose the house. It didn't damage my credit. I never missed a payment on it.
You were able to hang on to it.
Yes.
And then sell it on land contracts.
Correct.
So and you were managing that one at the same time?
Yes.
Did you have a lot of turnover? Or?
I really had no problem finding tenants. There were a lot of vacancies in town, but I've always taken care of my properties cosmetically and also capital improvements. There was a lot of properties available for rent, but they weren't in as good a shape. When I had a property available for rent, I did a little bit of marketing, but more so just with a for rent sign right in the front of the house. And I got that sign actually from the first realtor that I bought my first house with. I'd stick that sign out front with my phone number on it, and honestly, my phone was ringing off the hook a majority of the time. I never had to this day, I've never had a problem finding tenants.
When did you buy your next house, and what was that like?
It was roughly a year and a half later. That was a bank-owned house. There was quite a few bank-owned houses on the market, and also a lot of landlords that were possibly losing their houses, so they were on the market. There was just a ton of properties on the market, and I ended up buying a house, another one on the northwest side, bank-owned. and it was a single family, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, and I paid, I believe it was $13,000 for that house.
Okay, so you went from $70,000 for a house to $13,000.
Right, and now if I do cost averaging, now I'm getting close to my range. So
okay, how much did you have to put into that one?
Not too much. Again, some cosmetic work. It had hardwood floors. I had the floors refinished, paint, and I upgraded some plumbing and upgraded some electrical. There's a lot of rental properties with electric problems that just kind of deferred maintenance and so on. And I don't have a problem getting that taken care of. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I have a house available for rent. A tenant's going to pay me, and I want to make sure it's right.
What kind of rent were you able to get for the one you bought for $13,000?
$750.
$750. Okay, so now we're back.
Now we're back in the money.
The money range.
Right.
Has that turned out pretty good for you?
It has, and I still own that to this day.
What do you think the value's gone up to at this point?
It's probably in the just a rough guess. I would say probably $40,000 to $50,000.
Okay, so
it's probably kind of conservative, considering there's very few houses on the market, and what I've seen on the market,
very tight right now.
Right. So probably in the range of $50,000.
Okay. So that's turned out very good for you.
Yes. And actually, when I bought that house, there was a duplex available right next door. And I wasn't so fond of duplexes, but I figured somebody's going to own it. It might as well be me. At least I'll know the jerk that owns the house next door. Me. So I ended up bidding on that property, and I got that one also. So I had my single family done, ready to go, and I ended up buying the two unit right next door, and that was, I think, probably a month or 2 months later.
What'd you pay for that?
I believe it was cheap also. I believe it was $10,000.
You could pick things up for almost nothing. That's
right.
Great. What neighborhood was this?
This is on the northwest side on 6th Street. 6th near Alpine.
There was a lot available in the northwest side.
Yes.
That really you could just pick up for nothing.
Yes.
And now the northwest side is really kind of coming into its own.
Right. And I like that neighborhood. I feel very comfortable over there. I look at it as kind of a working class, starter homes, people, kind of blue collar neighborhood and so on. And I feel very comfortable there. Mm-hmm. So I used to drive up and down the street, just kind of getting a feel for the neighborhood, and I feel very comfortable over there.
Yeah. And you picked up some other houses in Wyoming and in Granville as well.
Yes, I bought 2 houses in Wyoming. That was in 2009.
Good time to be buying.
Right. I was buying when the market was down.
At this point, you're doing the Dave Ramsey thing. You're buying all cash, I'd imagine.
Nope, not yet.
Really?
Right. In 2009, I got mortgages on 2 houses. I bought one for $44,000. That was a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house, bungalow style, and another one was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. I bought that for $42,000. And I got small mortgages on both of those. But the mortgage companies are not real interested in writing small loan values.
It's like that's almost too small for most banks.
But the problem is I didn't have I struggled to put together $40,000 or $50,000. So I could put together $10,000, $10,000 or $12,000, which is a down payment. And then I figured if I can get into the house, then I figured the improvements, I would use my credit cards or whatever I had available, or future income. I'd be calculating out how much money I'm going to make for the next 6 weeks and figure out what I can afford. But if I could get the mortgage, and there were so many properties on the market, I was trying to get it, however I could. But I have never gotten into private money at all.
So you were basically using a combination of your own cash as down payments and then small bank loans? Is that where you were getting the mortgages from?
Correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how have those turned out for you?
Extremely well. So I'm rents have gone up considerably in the last year and a half to 2 years, and to the point where I went from one property manager. We parted ways. I went to another property manager, and I was going to eventually just turn over all my properties over, because at the time I was driving over the road and just out of town, and that was my plan, was to turn all of my properties over. But I was just giving them a test run, and I had some issues also. I think it was just a feeling out. what I'm getting from a property manager versus what I do myself. And again, I'm very customer focused. I wanted to take care of my tenants because I expect the tenants to pay me. And I've told all my tenants, if I start having an issue with getting paid on time, I need to be paid on time because I pay the water bill and your water's never gotten shut off. And I pay the mortgage, even though you haven't paid me on time, I still pay the mortgage. There's no foreclosure notice on the house.
You're paying the property tax.
Right.
Insurance.
I've got bills, so I need to be paid on time. And I've never had a problem collecting rent. I have had to put some tenants out, but I've never missed a month's rent without evicting a tenant. If they don't pay, if they don't pay by the 7th, they're getting a pay or quit notice. Or actually, if they don't pay me by I haven't done it for a bit now, but I file it relatively quickly, so I give them a pay or quit notice, and on the 8th day, if I still haven't gotten paid, I give them a warning. Now I'm going to go down and file for eviction, and once I have a court case filed, you're going to have a hard time finding another property to rent when you've got an eviction on your record. Because once that court case, the number gets filed against that tenant, it's on their record. And I've actually been to court to evict a tenant very seldom. Considering I've been doing this for 20 years, I think I've only been to court 7 or 8 times. And 2 of those times was for the same tenant, and that was just about 4 or 5 months ago. So I've been real lucky not having to go to court.
So of all your properties, what would you say is the one that has turned out to be the most trouble, that's cost you the most headache?
My 2-unit, without a doubt. I had some maintenance issues that the house had. The 2-unit had structural issues that were just beyond my capability. I'm not a construction guy. I was relying on contractors and some advice from different people I had, but it just had some structural issues that needed to be taken care of that were just beyond what I knew about and what I was comfortable getting into. And then I started having issues with tenants. The upstairs didn't like the downstairs didn't like the upstairs. And anytime you have tenants in a closed, it was a pretty small 2-unit. I think at one point it was probably a single family, but they converted it to a 2-unit, and it was registered as a 2-unit with the city of Grand Rapids. 2-bedroom downstairs, 1-bedroom upstairs. But there were arguments and so on, and I was still managing that on my own. And I'm getting phone calls at all hours of the night and so on. And it was pretty stressful between my business that I was running at the time, plus this rental property. And I called my realtor and I told her I need to dump this thing and dump it fast. So I ended up selling that on land contract. Took a couple of months, but I ended up selling on land contract.
So you prefer single families?
Yes, I have zeroed in on single family. To me, the single-family tenants make a single-family home more of a home instead of an apartment. It's someplace to stay for a while until that doesn't work out, and then they'll find somewhere else. So I like the stability of a single-family house. And
where are you now in your investing? Are you still looking for properties? Are you still buying, or are you happy with what you have and you're just kind of holding steady right now?
I've held steady. My cash flow is to the point where I've got a majority of my debts paid down, and I'm using of my cash flow for my rental business. I don't live off a dime of my rental property income. I still work. I still have a job. I could afford to stop working, but I don't, because my plan is when I retire, I want to have all capital improvements done on my properties for the foreseeable future. And by that, I mean roofs, siding, windows, furnaces, and then you're just down to regular maintenance, like a hot water heater or carpet and flooring and paint and so on. But I don't want to have to put a roof on when I'm retired and counting on some of that money. So when you say you're not living off of any of the rental income, does that mean you're putting it all back into the properties to take care of those issues? Yes. This past year, I've had 2 siding jobs done. 2 siding jobs, one roof job, and then I had some turnover, and I ended up doing extensive rehabs, complete flooring, complete paint. So I laid out a lot of money this year, but I considered it a worthwhile expense. The houses look great. My one property I had on the northeast side, when I bought it, it had, I don't know what they call it, but it looked like roofing shingles, but that's what was on the side of the house. And that was a finish that they had at the time, but it just looked ugly as can be. And I ended up putting siding on that house, so it looks great. So I've had quite a few roofing and siding jobs done over the last few years, and I keep turning that money over into improving my properties. And now I'm at the point where I'm just finishing up an extensive rehab right now on one of the last properties that I bought, and it's coming out really nice. I'm going to be ready to go in just a few weeks, and then at that point, I'm going to get back to paying down my debts.
So I'm really interested in your philosophy then of investing, because you really seem to have found your bread and butter in the single family homes that are in really the $40,000 to $50,000 range. Have you ever thought about doing a different method, or is that just where you're comfortable, and is that where you like it because that's where you found the most success?
I like it because I have found success, and also as I brought up, I think families make their home in a single family home, and I think the turnover should be less. Some of the time it hasn't been, but I'm with a property manager, and I'm upgrading tenants, getting a better quality tenant, better screening tenants. She does an excellent job for me screening tenants. So I've had less turnover, and that has really been my focus. And I listen to a lot of podcasts. Podcasts are a great educational tool, and I do a lot of driving, so that's my entertainment. And there's different podcasts that say your focus, where you're going to do the best at is multifamily. And there's another podcast I listen to, and he says his focus is $40,000 single family houses. And there's another podcast I listen to that says don't necessarily look for property in your own backyard. You might have to go out of state and so on. And I like driving down the street and pointing out my house and say, oh, we had a real heavy wind last night. I like driving by and see if my roof is okay, or if there's any branches in my yard, or see if in the springtime have the tenants cut the grass that they're responsible for. I like driving past and making sure things are nice and tight, what I expect. I like to, the way I term it, inspect what you expect. I expect my property to be taken care of. I don't want to drive by once in 6 months and see that the grass is knee high, or get a citation from the city for tall grass. And I have gotten a few of those from one of my properties. I had some college kids there, and they weren't used to taking care of the grass and so on. But that is my focus, is single family. It's my niche. I feel very comfortable with it. And I did tell my realtor, if I ever think of buying a two-family again, talk me out of it, extremely aggressively.
Yeah, it really seems like you found a niche that you're good at, and that you can kind of have a lot of control over.
When I first got started, I went to one of the RPOA conferences and sitting down for lunch, and this is several years ago, sitting down for lunch and talking through what some other landlords are doing, what they're saying, and so on. And I remember, and it was very early in my investing, one of the investors said, if you don't do your own maintenance, you'll never make it in this business. You can't afford to hire somebody to do electric work and plumbing and drywall and so on. You'll never make it. And I used to do all my own trash cleanouts, when tenants would leave. Some tenants leave and they leave all their junk for you as a present. And you got to go in there, and I've done that myself. Go in there with a push broom and a snow shovel inside the house and start scooping stuff up into trash bags.
Do you think that's true, that if you don't do all your own maintenance, you're never going to make it in this business?
I disagreed with them, and I spoke up at the lunch, because I told them I do a little bit here and there, but I'm not as handy as far as plumbing or carpentry. Those are skills that guys and ladies go to school for and then hone that craft. And I'm just not very good at it. I've got some tools. I've got a circular saw and so on. I've got a handful of tools, and I could make do. I've hung drywall on one of my properties early in my real estate investing, but I'm just not very good at it. I'd rather pay somebody that is really good at it and have a quality job.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, first of all, basically what that statement says, if you're not good at maintenance and doing your own work, you're not going to be successful in this business.
Right.
You're basically then excluding anyone who's not good at those things to begin with.
Correct.
From getting into rental property ownership. And I disagree with that. And I also think that and it's fine for those people who are good at it, enjoy it, and want to do it. That's great. But just realize you've created a job for yourself. You're not a real estate investor.
Right.
You've created a job in real estate for yourself because you're now doing all of the work yourself.
Right. Retirement advisors advise you to keep your portfolio diverse, and I have my income diverse. I have a job along with my rental property income, and when I retire, I've got a pension coming. Plus Social Security, plus I'll have some rental property income, and I'm not sure how long I'm going to work yet, but I know what I'm good at, and I focus on that. And I know if I have a handyman, and he's good at that, he's reliable, and if I need flooring done, he's good at that. I just came across a drywall contractor that did an excellent job for me at a good price. So I hire people that are good at what they do, and I stay good at what I do.
As we wrap it up here, Jeff, what advice do you have for our listeners that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I know I'm not as sophisticated as some of the other guests that have been on the podcast, and I was pleasantly surprised to get invited to be on the podcast. I consider myself, I'm just a little guy. I'm just trying to get along between working and having some rental property and being able to retire comfortably. But this is a fun business. I don't use some of the financial tools. I'd like to get into that some more. And I know the RPOA has some financial analysis classes. Everyone's got a different story. How you come up with your down payment money or your total purchase if you're making a cash purchase as far as credit cards and home equity lines of credit and so on. There is no right answer for how to get started in this business. You know, some people use family money and so on. Some people get mortgages. Some people use private money and so on. For every investor that you talk to, you've probably got that many different responses for how to get started. I wouldn't say there's a correct way to get started in this business. What I would say is keep in mind what your mortgage payments are going to be. Factor in some capital improvement money. Factor in a vacancy rate, so that you can expect that, maybe a 10% or a 15% vacancy rate, so that you know if you're going to be turning that property over, you're going to have some maintenance costs, and have enough money available, because if you turn a property over, you have to put someone out or they give notice they're leaving, you're not going to have the rental income, and you need to fix it up before you can rent it out again. And if you don't have the money to do that, it's going to sit empty and go on and on and on. And if you don't have the personal income to recover from that very quickly, it goes down a road that you don't want. Right. And then you start getting stressed out. So
make sure you know, if you're not getting income from the property, where that money is going to come from, right, to help you get that property back on the right path.
Correct. So I like this business. It's a fun business. I wouldn't trade the experiences that I've had. I started out extremely lucky. As I brought up earlier in the podcast, I had so little maintenance to do with those first couple of houses, and it was honestly a fluke, because I might not have turned out as well as what I did. But at the time, I didn't know any other landlords, no one in my family, none of my friends. No one had a business. No one owned rental property. Everyone just had a job and went to work and eventually retire and so on. So I wanted to branch out and do something more. But it's been a fun business, and I'm still looking for opportunities. But in the meantime, I think I have, as I'm getting closer towards retirement, thinking about retiring, I've changed my focus a little bit, and I'm in what I would consider my wealth building years. My kids have been out of the house for several years now, so I have a low cost of living. And again, I have a job that I'm making my personal income, and I'm using my rental property income to fix up my properties and get ready for the next purchase.
Well, Jeff Wilson, thanks so much for talking with me today and sharing your 20 years plus experience in this business.
Thank you, Brian. It's been an honor to be part of the podcast. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.